All right, well, when we last left off, we were working on getting this guy out of the truck, and here it sits on the workbench. You can tell from that video, since then, I've done a little bit of work on pressure washing it and cleaning it up because it was very dirty and it needed it. So I'm going to start working on tearing it down. I've already got the governor out the back here. This is taken off. So I'm going to slide this guy out. Kind of did a little once over on him. It doesn't look bad, in spite of the possibility for it to look pretty bad, with all that fluid and everything being as bad as and gross as it is. I mean, you can see this thing had some pretty nasty stuff running around inside of it. So that guy should probably clean up, and we can reuse it. The springs seem to be working. Everything seems to be kind of moving around like it ought to, so we set that guy aside. I got the seal off the back here, so we'll set that guy aside. I think I'm actually going to go up there and get that table down and maybe set that table up like right in here somewhere for all of the parts so that I can lay everything out. So anyway, and then we'll start tearing into this guy. We got that part done. We'll have to flip it around here and get this solenoid pulled out, and we've got to undo the kickdown cable over here, and we've got to get this guy out of there. And then at that point, once all those things are pulled off, we can tip it up and pull the pan off of it again. I know I've already had it off once, but I put it back on so that there was something flat for it to sit on when I pulled it out of the truck. You don't want, well, maybe you do. I don't know. I'm not a pro at this by any means, but I would assume that you don't really want to support the transmission by the valve body. So I went ahead and put the pan back on so that I could support the transmission by the pan. And then once we get that tipped up, we'll start working on pulling the pump out and get all the guts out of it, lay everything out, kind of take a look at it. I'll work with you guys here a little bit to see if we can do a post-mortem on this thing and figure out what actually killed it, because sometimes that's evident. Sometimes it's not, but we'll see. So the kickdown cable comes off with a 10 millimeter bolt, which I can practically guarantee you is not factory original, because in 1977, I don't think GM was really in much of a habit of using metric. So kind of maybe some indication that this thing's been worked on at one point in time or another, but who knows. Bring the thunder. Okay, one 10 millimeter bolt, and the kickdown cable is released but not removed on the inside. We've got to get that on the underside once we get to the underside of the valve body. It's connected on the inside under there. Next thing is this guy. All right, so got to pull the servo out here. There is, come on, focus. There's a hole right there that you get into with a punch, like so. And then you get on that punch with a hammer, and you tap on the punch until it knocks this snap ring out. And then you get on there with your fingers or maybe a pair of pliers. Let's go get a pair of pliers. Walk with me. There's the shot. All right. Pair of pliers. Back with the pliers. If I can do this one-handed, I bet I can't. I bet I've got to hold the transmission. It came out. So, just a little snap ring holds that in. So we'll take this over here and set it down over here. I looked into it a little bit too. I said something about that being a 10 millimeter bolt being odd. Apparently no, these were manufactured with a bunch of millimeter bolts even as late back as the 1970s. So interesting. Next step, we got to pull that off, so stand by. Okay, so we've got to get this accumulator cover off. I believe that the way that one does that is to get in here like this and just kind of do it. See, it's moving. It wants to come out. I'm relatively certain that, yeah, I was going to say, this isn't going to like jump out and grab me by the neck. I'm pretty sure there's a spring behind it, but it's not under a lot of tension. So this is supposed to have an O-ring on it, which must be in here. There it is right there. So this O-ring should be nice and round and not square. It looks like it's definitely got some angles on it, so that needs to be replaced soon. I'll go ahead and put that right there. And then a spring for the accumulator. The spring isn't broken, appears to be in good shape. I don't know whether all of these parts come with the rebuild kit that I bought or not. I suppose we'll find out. But if any of this is broken and doesn't come with the rebuild kit, obviously I'll have to source that. But this spring appears to be in pretty good shape. So, spring is good. Okay, accumulator pistons in here. Sometimes you can just grab it with your fingers and yank it out. And by golly, that's what I was able to do. So there's your accumulator piston. There are O-rings on this, and we're kind of basically like piston rings, like in an engine. I can't really point at it because I'm holding it right there. And then an O-ring around this edge to seal. And then in there. Again, all of this is going to have to be cleaned out really well. But that piece is now disassembled. All right, the next step then is to take the shift modulator off. This is the part that controls how the transmission shifts. It's hooked up to a vacuum line that runs up like to the intake. And it uses vacuum impulse or something to figure out how to, I mean, this is all magic to me. I mean, I know how these things go together. I don't actually know how they work all that well. But this thing basically tells the transmission, hey, the motor is at X and X, doing X and X, it's time to shift. So got to take this off. I believe a new one of these comes with the rebuild kit. I doubt very much I'll put it back on. There's a couple of reasons. One of them is these usually have like a little adjustment screw on them somewhere that allows you to sort of adjust the shift. This doesn't have that, which means to me that it's probably like an older model and that I could probably actually upgrade it and have a little bit more adjustability in the shift if I got an upgraded one. But let's take it off. And it just pulls straight out like that. That's what it looks like. This one's obviously filthy. It has this bracket on the back that is not part of it. It just slides in there and holds it on. The other thing too that I'm going to start doing, I haven't been doing up to this point, and I need to get the kick down bolt and start the process here, but I'm going to actually put the bolts back in where they go. This is just one less thing I've got to keep track of. But that's good practice. So we'll take this guy out and we'll put this guy back in there. I haven't done this in a while, so kind of remembering how all of this works. And that's one of the tricks that I've learned over the years is if a guy puts the bolt back in the hole where it came out of as you're doing these rebuilds, it's just one less thing you've got to keep track of. So the kickdown cable, I said we were going to have to take the valve body off to get it released. I'm told that you actually don't have to do that, that there is actually a way to get them out, but I'll be dipped if I can figure it out. So maybe we'll take a look at it once we get the valve body off, but I'm told that that actually will come out. Yeah, so. And then the other thing that I remembered that I haven't done yet, I put this old rubber glove in the dipstick hole while I was pressure washing it. There's a boot in here, or there should be. It must have come out with the dipstick. Never mind. I was going to say there's a boot in here that usually sits in this hole right here that you got to yank out. It comes with the rebuild kit, but it must actually be on the dipstick. So anyway, carry on. Shift linkage needs to come off. I'm told that it's a 15 millimeter bolt. So we will test that theory. that is indeed exactly what it was. So that is sort of a squared off keyed shaft, if you will, as is that. So it basically forces you to put it back on right. You can't screw it up. Unfortunately, I can't put that nut back on because as we're pulling it all apart, that has to go back inside and come out. And if you put the nut on, it won't come. So we're going to take the nut and put it over here, more or less where it goes. That's the nut for that. There. I have like waxed butcher paper that I put down on the table just so that it doesn't stain up my table and make a mess. I don't know if it'll work or not, but we're going to find out. Okay, governor's out. Shift linkage is out. What are we missing? Are we missing anything on the outside here, guys? Or do we dig into the pump? Oh, the valve body at this point. I can't remember. Let me check. I remembered something. So the shift modulator valve. I forgot to pull the valve out. It goes in here. Get in there, and let's see if we can grab it and get it out without damaging it too badly. There she came out. Oh, she came out real nice. So she was nice and smooth and clean in there. That's what that looks like. It does stuff and things, just so you know. I know how they go together. I don't actually know all that well how they work. So that guy goes like in there and then rolls. It's going to roll over there. So it wants to be there, but I'm going to tell it again that I'd like for you to be there. There we go. Much better. There's also an O-ring in here that you have to get out. So we get our little dental pick boy, and we're going to get him out. And he appears to be similarly flattened and, well, I don't know, like older than me vintage, like most of the things on this truck. So we'll put that guy there. All right, we're going to get him resituated here and start tearing into two hands. Well, tearing into that. Says it takes a 1/2 inch for bolts on the pump, so we're going to go ahead and we'll put our 15mm back and retrieve our 1/2 inch. One-handed, everything one-handed. I'm pretty impressed with myself, you guys. Is everybody else impressed too? Okay, and then we just start taking these out. I don't know for sure. Yeah. Come on. Uh-oh. That one's spicy. Yeah. Well, let's get these off. But I'm going to set you guys down for just a second because I think I might need to use a manual wrench for Mr. Spicy Boy over here. Stand by. Okay, they're all off except for that one. It doesn't want to come off. It's really tight. So I'm going to try something. I am going to, well, first of all, I always hate solving problems on YouTube because there's probably going to be a bunch of people that come into the comments and tell me what an idiot I am. But I'm kind of hoping that this is going to work. So I'm going to upgrade here just a little bit. I'm going to go from, hey, will you please come off, to I wasn't asking. And we'll see how well that works. All right, we've got to give it the old vroom vroom. This one doesn't do it real well. It's got a slow start, a soft start on it. All right, I wasn't asking. Take one. Get on there. There we go. Bring the thunder. Oh, we have her in first gear. There we go. Let's put her in I wasn't asking gear. Let her rip. Ha! Told you I wasn't asking. I win, you lose. Well, in the words of the unfortunately late, but definitely great Jim Varney. Ew. This is a combination of burnt automatic transmission fluid and pressure washer juice and Castrol Super Clean that came out of it when I tipped it up, because as I said, I did pressure wash it out. So I'm not worried about it, because I'm going to tear the whole thing apart, clean it up, dry it out. I mean, there's not going to be any of that left in it when I'm done. But it does make the workspace a little bit dirtier, which is why I used the handy dandy pan. Highly recommend if you're going to do transmission rebuild. Even if you don't pressure wash it like I did, that would all be transmission fluid coming out, because you can't ever get all of it out of there. So taking the pan bolts off. Go out, yes, good. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. How many did I put in it? The hell is that? I don't know, it's a thing. We'll figure it out. I think that's it. So she should come off. In the meantime, I'm going to put the bolts. What did I do with the pan bolts? They're in there somewhere. Let's put them in this one. There we go. Not with the rest of them, but I don't want to spend the time to look for them right now. Removing pan. Stand by. Not removing pan. We've got an interloper. We weren't done yet. Let's see, what did I do with those other ones? There. Okay, now let's try again. Pan came off. Very good. Okay. Gross pan. You, gross, 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 gross. Okay, let's tear into this. Using your largest screwdriver, you go put your screwdriver thingy on that thingy, and you turn. And then screw come out. See? Yeah, it's very good. Magnetic screwdriver. Square thing come off. This is the filter that filters the stuff. I'm guessing that it's no good, because it would be full of all of that gunk. Let's take a look at the filtery boy. Gross. Also gross. So how does this thing work? I guess I've never seen one like this. Usually I see them on like a plastic neck that goes down. I've never seen one that just bolts directly to the valve body like that. But it looks like it kind of goes, like just bolts up to this surface here. But I don't see any effort to seal that. So, yes I do. There's a gasket. Yeah. There it is. There's the effort to seal it. Do you see? He's a gasket. Okay, I'm going to set all this aside. This is garbage. I'm not going to reuse this. But for reasons that I can't quite elaborate yet, I don't really want to throw it away. There may be a reason that I need to look at that one for some reason. I don't know. I never throw things away until I'm done with the project. If you ever have to like pirate a part off of something or whatever. I think the next step is all of the bolts have to come out. So we will dive into that. All right, so before we take the bolts off to do the valve body, we have to, this right here is the end of that kickdown cable that we were playing with earlier that I couldn't get out. We have to disconnect that from this linkage. It kind of doesn't want to come off just because of the way that it's sort of in there. That kickdown cable is toast anyway, so I mean I'm not particularly concerned about saving it to reuse because it needs to be replaced. But I think that I can just get the whole thing apart without wrecking the kickdown cable by just popping this little jobber-do, if I can. It doesn't really want to, it just keeps moving. It's annoying. Stop. Oh, sorry. I should probably watch the camera too. Stop being annoying. I'm off. I know, let's do everything one-handed. That'll add a level of complexity and fun to it. Oh, of course, there we go. Okay, now she's going to come out. See? Oh, there. And then we've just got to get in here and guide that linkage off. Guide. Oh. Well, that's not part of the kickdown take cable. I take it back. Okay, well, learn something new every day. First Turbo 350, so that goes there. Okay. Should be 1/2 inch. What do I have on the thing? I have 1/2 inch. So let's take some valve body bolts off, I guess. Valve body bolt, go. I think these are all the same, but I'm going to kind of pay attention here because there might be a couple of them that are different. And if they've got some that are different that go in different spots, why, the guy probably would like to know that. Okay. Those two are the same. Same. You guys really want to watch me do this all the way through, or should I just do a break here real quick and I'll let you know if any of them are different? Let's do that. Okay, well, I did the thing. They are all the same. The little detent roller that fits into this kind of gives you that tunk, 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 tunk when you shift. Came off with one of the bolts, so just to remind myself, I'm going to leave that on that bolt. The valve body itself sort of just fell off as soon as I took the last bolt out. I guess I thought it would maybe stick or something. I don't know what I thought. But anyway, I got to get this little linkage undone here, and then the valve body will come off, but I need 2 hands to do that. Okay, so as the valve body comes off, there's some parts here of import, and we'll get into kind of disassembling this here in a minute. First one is kind of the gear selector jobber-do here. It's got the little S bracket that connects it up to the shift linkage and pulls this in and out, and that essentially tells the valve body which gear the transmission needs to be in for manual selection. So if you put it in drive or reverse or whatever, that thing sliding in and out tells it what to do. We have the 2-3 accumulator. We took an accumulator out of the side earlier. This one, remember that guy and that spring and that thing? Yeah, so we took that accumulator out of the side earlier. That's the 1-2 accumulator. This is the 2-3 accumulator. So these are sort of the, I don't know, what do you want to call them? Servos, or sort of like a hydraulic solenoid, if you will, that, so this goes up and pushes into this guy, this piston right here. You see how that goes in and out? So that's how you actuate your 2-3 shift. This feller comes right out like so. And we'll take a look at that, clean it up and everything. But that right there is your 2-3 accumulator. And he goes right in there somewhere. in this spring. So I have read that actually both of the springs that we've pulled out so far, that one there and this one here in my hand, that some of the older school builders will actually remove those springs altogether and just not put them back in the machine, because it apparently gives you firmer upshifts, almost like a poor man's shift kit, if you will. I am going to put it back together the way that I took it apart. If I was interested in having firmer shifts, I'd just put a shift kit in it, but apparently you can do that. I don't know what the ramifications of doing that are. But anyway, this is sort of a locker plate or a locking plate that holds all the clutch packs in. You can kind of sort of look through there and see clutch pack, all those vertical stripey things. That is clutch rings for the clutch packs up inside. So we're going to take all these bolts out and get this plate off so that we can work on getting all of that out. And then also this valve body gasket has got to come off, but it is held down by that locking plate also. So I'm going to go ahead and take that off. Okay, just an item of note, as I'm pulling these valve body plates or gaskets or whatever off, they're covered in grit. So I am expecting to see some extreme clutch degradation as we start pulling clutch packs out of this thing. Okay. That goes there. Then we have these little check ball guys. There's a check ball there. There's a check ball there. There's a check ball there. And there's a check ball there. Okay? I'm doing this for me just as much as I am for you guys, because I need to remember where those go back when we put this thing back together. And a guy can find himself really screwed if he doesn't get those back in the right place, because training no worky. So we'll get those on good video so I can come back and look at it later. And there's a couple other things that we need to break down in here, but I'll be right back to discuss those because I got to go grab a couple tools. Next step is the removal of this screen filter right here. And as I understand it, it just kind of pries out real gentle-like. You do not want to lose this. I believe that it can be cleaned and it needs to be reused because I don't think that this comes with the rebuild kit. And I don't know if they're just not making them anymore or whatever, but guy can't seem to find one. So I suppose I could probably break the rebuild kit open and look and see if there's one in there. But if there isn't, that will clean up just fine anyway. It's not really a big deal. It just needs a soapy water and a good dry out. I don't remember if is there an O-ring in there that goes in there for that guy? There doesn't appear to be. Nope, no O-ring. Okay, next step is we get in here and we get behind that guy and give this a pry out. Oh wow, that's got a lot of slop in it. Pry this out so that it'll pop this whole assembly loose. I'm going to see if I can do it with one hand so you guys can kind of watch me do it, but I'm not actually necessarily feeling all that confident about it. Yeah, definitely a two-hand job. Anyway, that's what you do. You'll know that you got it because this whole thing will kind of go punk and come out, you know, ½ inch or something. And at that point, then we can start disassembling. So, all right, I got it broken loose. Ultimately, all it takes is just a large screwdriver in that big dark gap right there. You kind of stick it in there. Everything forward of that, you pry forward on it and kind of give it a sharp whack, or kind of like that. And then, as you can see, this is now pulled loose. So a guy can now grab this and theoretically pull the pump off one-handed again, and doing everything one-handed. Okay. So we got some seals here, kind of sort of like a piston ring almost. These are they metal or Teflon? Kind of hard to tell. It might be Teflon. I don't know. A guy's kind of struggling to figure out whether this thing's been worked on before or not. I think that this is original because I want to say that the Teflon seals are kind of an indication that it's never been worked on before. This is the pump assembly as the engine is spinning. So let me just show you real quick. The shaft on this is actually more of like a collar. It's an outer shaft, and then there's an inner shaft. See this? So this is the inner shaft, the drive shaft for the truck, essentially. When this spins, the transmission does stuff and then comes out the back and the truck goes forward. This is directly coupled to the engine. It doesn't stop spinning with the torque converter or any of that sort of thing. It basically just spins when the engine's on, and that is what creates the line pressure for the hydraulic fluid inside of the transmission, and it just is the pump, essentially. So when the engine's going, this thing's spinning and creating pressure in the transmission. And then the torque converter then rides on that spline there and hooks into another spline on the... Let me got to turn this back over again real quick. It kind of hooks into way down inside there. I don't know if you can see it, but there's like some... There. See where the light's shining on that little cog in there, way down in that gap? The torque converter that cog sits down in there. And so that spins all of that. And then if you look down, there's the spline on the inside of the torque converter that hooks up to the other side of it. That essentially, yeah. I can't turn the torque converter over to show you the engine side, but the engine side actually essentially just spins the torque converter by the torque converter bolts, which bolt to the flex plate. And then also spins the pump. So theoretically, there really isn't a mechanical link between the engine and the transmission, because that is your link between the two, and that link is essentially a hydraulic link. It's, for lack of a better way of putting it, the internals of that thing are basically just two fans pointing at each other. One fan spins with the engine and throws hydraulic fluid at the other fan, and if you can picture one fan that's running and one that's not, if you point the one that's running at the one that's not, the one that's not will spin. I mean, that is a gross oversimplification of how that works, but that's really just pretty much it. You basically just got a fan spitting fluid at another fan. It makes that fluid spin, or that fan spin, and when that fan spins, then it makes that stuff spin, and then this thing does all the shifty stuff to get different ratios out the back end of it and everything. But we got to start breaking this guy down, though, because it is part of the rebuild, and I'm sure that it's all full of gunk and all sorts of stuff. So step number one is we get on here and take these 1/2-inch bolts off, which I'm about to do. Blink. Uno. Dos. Tres. Vier. Ah! Fünf. Okay. I need 2 hands to pull this apart, but I'll show you in just a second what I'm doing. Okay, so you pull this thing apart, and there's a whole bunch of springy boys on the underside of it that sort of apply the pressures and all of that stuff. I don't necessarily know how this works either. I know how it goes together. I don't really know how it actually does the thing that it does. It's got seals all the way around the outside of it. They are definitely, they're worn. Actually, you can see right there in the reflection of the light, you can see there's definitely some stuff happening to that. So then we've got this guy here. I don't know how that comes off. It doesn't really want to come off. I've got to look into that a little bit. I'm going to go kind of do a little bit of looking into how this whole thing comes apart, because it's not directly evident. But this is actually the part that does the pumping. You can see I showed you those little cogs that the torque converter fits into earlier. Well, there they are. So the torque converter spins this guy inside of that guy, and there's a thing in there, and it does other stuff, and it makes fluid go around in circles. Yeah, so welcome to my world. I have no idea. I got a mark, like a timing mark on that one. I don't really have a timing mark anywhere else. I don't, what's that? Nothing. I don't necessarily know what the heck we got going on here. Yeah, I got to look into this a little bit before I tear this apart too much more, just to make sure I'm actually going to be able to get it back together. It's not necessarily a foregone conclusion that when I tear all this apart that it can just go back together, however, because it does have a timing mark there, or something that appears to be timing mark-ish. So, but yeah, so this guy basically does this. And I think it's evident-ish, maybe, that you can see how it works. So the teeth come apart, sort of create a vacuum, suck fluid in between all the teeth. Then it kind of rides around in a circle, and then as it pinches back up, it creates pressure and pushes the stuff out the other side. And just kind of in general, I think the entire theory behind it, that's it. It just spins around in circles and makes fluid pressure. But that is as simple as it gets. That's what it does. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this thing the rest of the way apart. It's kind of a mess, and it's a lot of little tiny futzy stuff. I may set the camera up here somehow so that I can watch me doing this, but I can't do it one-handed. So one of the things that you always want to check on your pump when you tear it apart is there's a spot where you get wear, and if you get bleedage across it, then your pump won't pump. So one of these is the suction side, one of these is the pressure side. I think suction pressure, but it doesn't matter. This little gap right here, this little piece of metal that goes between the suction and the pressure side, if there's any wear there, if there's any crack there, if there's anything there that allows oil to get from one side to the other, your pump isn't going to work and your transmission isn't going to work. That little ridge of metal right there, the entire functioning operation of your transmission hinges on it not being worn or destroyed or anything. This actually looks like it's in pretty good shape. I'm using a ridiculously dirty rag because everything I'm doing right now is just dirty. We're going to clean the whole thing up, but I don't see any scoring or anything on there that's super concerning, so that's good. So I've got the pump turned right side up again. I'm going to try to get this pump washer off of the shaft. So this pump washer has shims in it. It comes apart into multiple pieces, and I can't take it apart with one hand. But it's really important that it has the shims in it because it sort of sets the in play. Anybody that's ever worked on differential drivetrain parts, everything, you understand how important in play is. But you want to make sure that when you put this back together that it ends up with the same number of shims and that your in play is all good. We'll check all of that when we put it back together too. I don't think that the rebuild kit's going to change the in play requirements all that much. It's just one thing to keep in mind. You want to make sure that you put it back together the way you found it, and again, I'll show you how to do in play when we put it all back together. I remember now what this mark is for. Anytime you see a mark, it means that it goes towards you when you put it back together so that it's not upside down. This is very directional. You can see the cogs that the torque converter right on are not centered in the gear. So if you got this in upside down, like so, then the torque converter would ride on top of the gear and it wouldn't be in and nothing would work when you put it back together. So the reason that that has this mark right here on it is to say, hey, you should be seeing that mark when you put this thing back together. Looking at these gears, they're showing, come on, focus. They're showing just a tiny bit, maybe a little bit of wear. They look good though. I mean, I'm not going to worry about that in the grand scheme of, you know, this truck having 100,000 plus miles on it and everything else, this transmission's going to be way better than it was when we started anyway. So we'll just go ahead and set those pieces there. This outer gear, I went ahead and made just the ever so slightest little mark on it with a punch so that I know which way it goes. I don't think this gear, it matters. I think this one goes in whichever way it wants to go in. But we have to pry this guy out. So we'll get in here with just a little bit of a, nope, not going to be big enough. We'll get in here with a little bit bigger of a, and I can't get under it. Need 2 hands. I'm going to get that pried out. We'll take a look at it here. And it looks pretty good. Not showing any undue wear, bad patterns. There's no scoring on the outside of it or anything. So feeling pretty good about that. We'll go and take him over here and put him with his little brother. And kind of just looking, this is filthy, just like everything else in here. You know, there's bushings and seals and all sorts of stuff that have got to come out of these. I'm not going to worry about that right now. It's kind of, you break it down to what you've got to break it down to, but if you go way too granular right now, it just starts getting to be a little overwhelming as far as the number of parts you pull out of it. So I'm going to start concentrating on the innards here, and we're going to start pulling that out. There's some snap rings and there's all sorts of stuff you got to start, and then all the clutch packs start coming out piece by piece. But we'll start doing that. So I'm just going to set this aside because all of the rest of this is kind of a, as I take the bushings off, I'm going to put new bushings back on. So all right, got you set up here. There's a wavy washer that goes on the front of this that I've already pulled out. There's this washer here. You know, it kind of goes in a specific way. This is kind of a, it's a friction plate for the clutches. And then you start getting into your clutches, which first glance at those, they look amazing. I'm a little confused as to why we're having trouble. At least those front clutches look pretty good. So I suppose we'll just keep tearing into it and try to figure out what's going on, but there's nothing here concerning by any means. So we'll set that down right there. And then that doesn't come out just yet because there's a snap ring back in there holding it all together. We got to figure out how to get that out. Okay, so you get in here, there's a band that goes around this drum in here. You take that band and kind of pry it out away from the case, almost like you're trying to apply the band around the outside of the clutch. And then you just kind of, you say hello to everything. So this is the band right here. Yeah, so the idea is that this band will tighten around this, and that is for, it doesn't actually get a lot of use. They usually look like they're in pretty good shape when you pull them apart, and you can actually see with this one, same situation. It doesn't actually get used much. The only time this band does anything is when you manually downshift into like second, or I think it does it for first too. But in any case, the idea behind it, you manually downshift, it kind of tightens around this right here and makes it so that when you downshift into second, it'll do compression instead of the thing just free spooling. So they don't get a lot of use because a lot of operators don't actually use that function. They don't really manually downshift an automatic transmission. They pretty much just use the brakes to come to a stop and whatever. But anyway, this band sits in here. I don't know if you can see from where you're at, but it sits in here kind of in this latch right here, and this whole drum assembly is essentially held in place by it. So you've got to get in here with your screwdriver and kind of just tighten that up around the drum to make it small enough that the whole assembly will come out, and you can get your drum out that way. So So these are our forward intermediate clutches. It's the whole clutch pack. But they don't look bad. They're just kind of old and brown. That is definitely not what went bad in the transmission. So we're just going to kind of grab the whole mess of those. And I can do this one-handed. Hang on. Sorry, you're going to get motion sickness. But you can just kind of look at them. They alternate, you know, steel plate, clutch, steel plate, clutch, just, you know, like normal. And they do not appear like they've had anything wrong with them. So I guess I don't really know where we're going to find the issue, but that isn't it. And this is the intermediate and forward band. I already told you that's not the issue either. So we'll keep digging into it. Okay, we'll pull off the intermediate sprag here. Let me see if I can get it off one-handed. Nope, not going to get it off one-handed. Let me get you set up. Get my finger out of the way. I'm going to try to dump you on the ground here. Okay, intermediate sprag coming off. Looks like this. If you hold it like this, it should spin counterclockwise, and that sound is okay, but it shouldn't spin clockwise, and that is exactly what it does. So nothing wrong with the intermediate sprag. Still not necessarily jumping right on top of whatever it is that we're fighting with here. We have now inside of this. Let me grab you here and get you back up here. This is another friction set, another clutch set, and this is your direct. I believe that this functions in third gear, which is your direct, and reverse. So this is your third gear and reverse clutches. Now I'm going to see if I can take a snap ring off one-handed. I can't. So that's sort of held in by another spring pack. Makes getting that snap ring out a little difficult. And these are, like I said, the direct clutches. So let's go ahead and take a look at these and see if maybe these are the ones that caused us the problem. It seems weird that it would be the direct or reverse clutches, because then it should have still driven forward in like first or second gear. But I'm told that it would not drive forward. So let me see if I can get these out. And again, it's a two-handed job. So there's another big snap ring that goes in here and holds the whole clutch pack in. And these clutches come out. And let's take a look at those. You know, again, I definitely see some discoloration in them. But gosh, I just have a really hard time believing that that was the problem. Those don't actually look like they're all that bad. So this is starting to become more and more strange, concerning. I mean, they're brown, they're old, they're discolored, they got hot. I mean, there's little doubt. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but there's definitely some signs of heat. But yeah, the plot thickens, the mystery continues. So we're going to go ahead and check the sprag. Again, it seems to be functioning well, but that's not necessarily a sign that there's nothing wrong with it. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this snap ring out of here. You guys actually get to watch me do one of these for the first time. I don't know, there's guys out there that can just pop these things off like they're nothing, but I always seem to get on the struggle bus with the snap rings. Okay, snap rings off. And then we line up. There's like a little release notch there where you can line this thing up. Nothing wrong with that. So to remove the sprag, you kind of just pull that outer ring off. We're going to take a look at that and make sure it looks good. It's got oiling grooves, and you want to make sure that they're not clogged or plugged or anything. Or not grooves, there's holes. let me see. You can see the hole right there, and actually you can see it's not plugged. But anyway, you want to check all of those. This also goes back on the way it came off, so you kind of want to make sure that you keep it in the right orientation. I don't think it terrifically matters, but whatever. Then the sprag kind of just comes off. And if you look at it, it's got a bunch of little rollers in it. And the idea is you kind of give it a shaky, and just make sure that none of the rollers fall out, or else it's no good. And none of these rollers fell out, so I'm going to call it good. So this is not something that gets replaced in the rebuild kit. So I'm just going to go ahead and put it back on. But I wanted to take it off and just make sure it was good before we got too far in. So I'll just reassemble it in the opposite order of what I assembled it in. Okay, moving on to the next drum. Got a little thrust bearing here that we've got to get off. Get it kind of set up there so I can get my fingers under it. But I have a magnetic screwdriver, so it's kind of messing with me. There we go. I think we get a new one of these with the rebuild kit, which is good because that one feels pretty sloppo. And then we take this guy here, and there is a snap ring around the outside for our forward clutches. And actually kind of looking in here at the darkness and the mess, I'm kind of starting to think maybe this might be our issue, which means we may have had reverse all along. Let me get that snap ring out and we'll see what happens. Okay, snap ring is out. Clutches come out. Ish, theoretically. Okay, let's take a look at these. I think you're going to find that there is the problem. That right there is why our transmission stopped working. So let me just kind of get up here closer to you and show you what's going on. You see all of that is just cracked and checked, and it's burnt. And you can see, like, in some spots it's almost basically down to the plate. And we've got actually quite a few clutch discs that are in here. Let's see, that's supposed to be a clutch disc, and it doesn't even have any friction material on it. See how it's got like the remnants of some friction material on it right there? That is not a steel, guys. That is supposed to be a clutch disc, but it is absolutely cheddared. So there's the issue. That right there is what took this puppy out. So woohoo, we found the problem. I'll continue doing the breakdown. Obviously, we're going to go ahead and do a full rebuild on it because there's no sense in putting it back together with old clutch surfaces everywhere else since we've got all the rebuild stuff for it. But that clutch pack right there is your culprit. And in fact, a guy can kind of get in here real quick. We'll set this ring down right here. And you can see we alternate between steels and clutch surface. So the clutch surface has the little jobs going to the inside here. See that? And the steels have the jobbers going to the outside. So anything with an inside is supposed to be a clutch, which, guys, does that look like a clutch to you? Is there anything left of that? Nothing. That's a steel. That's a clutch. You see that clutch, how it's shiny and metal? There's nothing left of it. It's gone. And in fact, it's all warped and everything too. That's a steel. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, that one's got just ever so slightly a tiny bit of clutch material left on it. That's a steel. That clutch is thrashed. Okay, well, there you go. It was your forward clutches that was the culprit. So we shall continue in the efforts of breaking this thing down, but I believe that we have found the problem. Okay, continuing the breakdown. We've got the ring gear for the forward planetary set right here. It's got a plastic washer job that I'm going to leave that on for right now. But anyway, there's not really anything special about this. We just clean it up, set it aside, reuse it. There is a 3-tab washer in here. Let's see if I get it out. Again, nothing particularly shocking or thrilling about that guy. So we'll set him right there. And then I want to say, is there a snap ring in there holding the rest of that planetary set in there? Because the planet gears, this is the planet carrier right here. You can see that's the sun gear, right? Planet gears, planetary gear set. I want to say there's going to be a snap ring in there holding that all in because it doesn't want to just come right out. And yeah, I can see it. There's like a little one right in there. So I got to get in there and get that guy out. So let me set you down real quick. Snap ring is out. It's a little bitty guy. I'm told that one there is worth its weight in gold because they don't make them anymore. And they're like a special size or something. So you don't want to lose that little guy. The planetary set coming out. So we want to kind of check this guy out and just make sure that there's not like an undue amount of play in them. That's got a little bit of side-to-side play, but it's not terrible. They're all about the same, actually. Yeah, so that must just be about what it's supposed to be. They spin nicely. You know, there doesn't appear to be any undue wear on any of them. So the planet gears look good. It's kind of one of those things where, you know, you kind of shake it around a little bit, make sure that nothing falls apart and nothing fell apart. So we'll go ahead and set that down there, and then we'll get in here. And I think the sun gear comes out with with the clutch protector. There's one more of those plastic bushy guys on the back of that. You know, that doesn't look terrible either. I don't see an undue amount of wear, although does that look like it's a little scored? Or is that just machining and they didn't ever finish it off because it's not actually a wear spot? I don't know. Well, let's go get this out of the way and we'll keep disassembling. There's another set of clutches in here. One more snap ring right there. And those clutches, you can kind of see there's a bunch of gunk back there, so those clutches must probably be burned out too. So, okay. Next step is this snap ring right here, I think. Let's see if I can get that to come out. Or if I'm going to need a second set of hands for that. See, the whole transmission's trying to move. I should do one of those modified screwdrivers where you kind of put like a little hook in the side of it so that you can get in here and kind of twist and then hook. But this is a two-handed job, so I'm sorry I've got to put you down. Got it. Okay, let's see, what do we do now? That doesn't come out. What else do we have to do here? It looks like we've got to line everything up. There's like a little releaser jobber do up here. What does this do? Is that the parking? Okay, let me dig into this here a little bit. We'll figure out how to get the next part out. Okay, well, so on further review, there's nothing actually holding it in. This is kind of a two-hand job, so I'm going to just get in here and kind of it's supposed to just come out. See if I can just kind of wiggle it around in here. See if I can. It'll just take a little bit of doing, a little bit of something. Okay. All right. You're gonna be like that, huh? All right. Well, I'm gonna probably do some stuff that's not strictly kosher. That's coming out, but I'm not getting it on camera. Okay, so there's dogs and teeth in here. This thing's out now, so I'm just gonna go ahead and yank it out and I'll show you what's going on. But there's dogs and teeth in here. These guys match up with all of these in here. And there was a little spring. This guy was in there. And that spring was essentially set up in such a way that it was applying pressure on those dogs and teeth so that they were like riding hard against these. So what I did was got in there with this pair of spreader pliers, and I got into one of the dogs and spread that spring out and yanked on it with my other hand. And by golly, everything just seemed to come right out at that point. So I got another bearing, a thrust bearing, that goes on the back of this. I'll set that down for just a second. Get all these clutches off of this thing first. There we go. Uh-oh. I guess that's what I get for doing everything two-handed. Or one-handed. Gosh dang it. That might have been expensive. I think I might have just ruined that sprag. But that clutch is definitely toast, so we're continuing to find clutch issues. Let me see if I can salvage this. I don't know how the heck all this went together either. That's the other problem. Okay, I got to put a couple of rollers back in that sprag because they came out. All right, well, we'll set that there. I'll reassemble all of that off of camera and get it all back together. But ultimately, we're looking at our reverse low clutches now. And they're toast too. So that would be why it didn't have reverse gear. At this point, the transmission's pretty well broke down without having a special tool to compress those springs down there to get all the rest of it out, which I've got to go get from AutoZone or something. But anyway, I'm going to work on getting the rollers back in this sprag. You can see there's one missing right there, and that'd be one of those guys. So I'll break all this down, get a little bit more of it on video, but ultimately that right there is the vast majority anyway of the breakdown. Like I said, I got to go get this tool. It's almost kind of like a gear puller or something, but it does kind of the opposite, where it spans from that lip there to that lip there and compresses this whole mess so that those springs are compressed, and it allows you to remove the clips that hold this thing in. So anyway, I believe, just for everybody's edification, that guy right there, that's the park pawl. That's the guy that comes sticking out when you put it in park, and it keeps this thing from spinning. So every time you put your rig in park and it's staying in one spot, it's because of that little tiny piece of metal right there. So use your e-brake, folks. Okay. So looking at the next planetary set, all of the planet gears look really good. The ring gear looks very nice and in good shape. Doesn't seem to have any adverse wear on it or anything. I mean, it's all looking really good. It's just the clutches. I've got a, let's see, where did it go? Where'd my little green handled screwdriver go? There it is. I've got a snap ring right here that I need to try to pull out and try to do it one-handed. That'll allow me to get this one-way sprag out. And then it's a trip to AutoZone, I guess, to get the tool. So I'm just kind of looking at the clutches here. This is a steel, not the clutch. This is what's left of a clutch. Nothing. And nothing. And also nothing. And then if you come over here, these apparently got hot enough that they're actually kind of, let's see, where did they go? On this planetary set, you can see they rode up, they like expanded out and rode up, and these are actually seized onto this planetary set. So I'm gonna have to get that and tap it off and get rid of it. But again, you can see those clutches. The friction material is next to non-existent. So we've definitely identified the problem. But that right there is a lot of shit. I'm gonna have to put it all back together the way I took it apart with new clutches. And I think the next step is I'm gonna go dig into the rebuild kit and see what all comes with it, because I'm a little concerned about the last one-way sprag. It keeps having pieces fall out of it, and I don't know if that's just because I just dropped it or what's going on. It could very easily that I just damaged it when I dropped it. I didn't see how it all went together, so I've got to get a quick diagram. I usually just try to remember how things come apart, but since it all just kind of fell out on the ground, I didn't really get a good look at how it all came apart. So we will go do a little research, a little looking into it. Head down to AutoZone for the little thingamajigger to do the thing with the compressor rater and pull the rest of the jobber do out. And we should be getting ready to stick this thing back together.